The email was still glowing on Emily Carter's phone when she looked down at her watch. 8:14 a.m. Her interview was at 9. The biggest interview of her life. One chance to escape the endless cycle of overdue bills, second jobs, and wondering whether she'd have enough money left for groceries after paying rent. She whispered to herself, "You can do this, Emily. Just get there on time." She hurried down the crowded sidewalk in downtown Chicago, carefully holding a folder that contained 3 freshly printed copies of her resume. She had ironed her only navy blue blazer twice the night before. Her shoes weren't new, but she'd polished them until they looked almost perfect. Everything depended on today. Then she heard it. "Please, somebody help me." The voice was weak, almost lost beneath the sounds of traffic. Emily turned. An elderly man had collapsed beside a city bus stop. His cane lay several feet away while groceries rolled across the sidewalk. People walked around him without stopping. Some glanced over. Most never even slowed down. Emily froze. She looked toward the towering glass office building only a few blocks away, then back at the old man struggling to breathe. "No," she whispered. "Please don't do this to me today." The crosswalk signal began counting down. She could still make it, if she walked away now. The old man tried to sit up but immediately winced in pain. His trembling hand reached into empty air. Nobody noticed. Emily closed her eyes for one painful second. Her mother had always told her something she could never forget. The world remembers successful people, but heaven remembers kind ones. She let out a slow breath. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, not to the old man, but to the opportunity she might be giving up. She ran toward him. "Sir, don't move." The elderly man looked up with tired blue eyes filled with embarrassment. I'm fine," he said between breaths. "You don't need to stop." Emily knelt beside him. "You don't look fine." "My appointment. It can wait." "It shouldn't." She smiled gently. "Neither should your health." She picked up his groceries, retrieved his cane, and noticed one of the paper bags had split open. Apples and canned soup had scattered everywhere. Emily gathered the last of the groceries while trying not to look at the time. 8:19. Every passing minute felt like another door quietly closing. She looked back at the elderly man. "My name's Emily." He managed a faint smile. "Harold." "Okay, Harold. Can you tell me where it hurts?" "My chest, and I got dizzy. I thought I could make it to the bus." Emily noticed his face had turned unusually pale. "Have you had heart problems before?" He hesitated. "A few years ago." Her stomach tightened. That settled it. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Harold reached for her wrist. "No, please. Ambulances are expensive." Emily shook her head. "I'd rather worry about a bill than regret not making this call." The dispatcher answered, and Emily calmly explained what had happened, following every instruction while staying beside Harold. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered. Not to help, to watch. One man muttered, "Somebody else will take care of him." Emily looked up, unable to hide the disappointment in her voice. "Somebody already is." An awkward silence settled over the group. A young woman finally stepped forward. "Can I help?" Emily smiled gratefully. "Could you keep him talking?" Harold let out a weak chuckle. "I guess you're not giving up on me." "Not a chance." The distant wail of sirens grew louder. Emily glanced at her phone again. 8:34. There was no way she'd make the interview now. She quickly opened her email and typed with trembling fingers. "Good morning. I'm deeply sorry, but I'm helping someone through a medical emergency and may not arrive on time. I understand if the interview must be canceled. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. A wave of disappointment washed over her. Months of preparation, late nights studying, practicing interview questions in front of her apartment mirror. It all seemed to disappear with the tap of one button. The ambulance pulled up and paramedics hurried over. One of them knelt beside Harold. "What happened?" Emily answered every question she could. Another paramedic looked at Harold's wallet. "Sir, do you have any family we can contact?" Harold slowly nodded. "My son. Can you give us his number?" Harold reached into his coat pocket with shaking hands and pulled out an old leather card holder. Emily noticed there were several business cards inside, but she wasn't paying attention to the names. She simply handed the holder to the paramedic. The paramedic made a quick call. "Hello? This is Chicago EMS. Your father has experienced what appears to be a medical episode. He's stable, but we're transporting him to Northwestern Memorial Hospital." A pause. Then the paramedic's expression changed. "Yes, sir. We'll see you there." He ended the call and looked back at Harold. "Your son said he'll be there as fast as he can." Harold closed his eyes with relief.
Good.
As the stretcher was loaded into the ambulance, Harold reached out toward Emily. She stepped closer. He gently squeezed her hand. "I don't know why you stopped." Emily smiled through tired eyes. "Because someone would have stopped for my dad." Harold studied her face for a long moment. Not everyone would. Before the ambulance doors closed, he asked quietly, "What was so important that you were rushing this morning?" Emily laughed softly, though it sounded more like she was trying not to cry. "A job interview." "You'll be late." "I know. I'm sorry." She shrugged. "I'll survive." The ambulance door shut. Emily stood alone on the sidewalk, watching the flashing lights disappear into morning traffic. Only then did the weight of what she'd sacrificed finally hit her. She checked her phone. There was already a reply from the company. Her heart raced as she opened it. "Ms. Carter, thank you for letting us know. Unfortunately, interviews cannot be rescheduled due to the number of qualified applicants. We wish you the very best in your future endeavors." Emily stared at the screen. Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't cry because she regretted helping Harold. She cried because she had needed that opportunity so desperately. After a few moments, she wiped her face, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "Maybe today wasn't the day I got the job I wanted." She slipped her phone into her pocket and started walking. "But maybe it was the day I became the person I want to be." She had no idea that less than 20 minutes away, a black luxury SUV had just screeched into the hospital entrance. A tall man in an expensive charcoal suit jumped out before the vehicle had fully stopped. Doctors and nurses recognized him immediately. He wasn't just another worried son. He was one of the youngest and most respected CEOs in Chicago. And the first thing his father said after opening his eyes would change both of their lives forever. The moment Daniel Harrison walked into the emergency department, every fear he'd been holding back hit him at once. "Where is he?" he asked, his voice tight. A nurse pointed him toward a treatment room. "He's awake. The doctors are running a few tests." Daniel barely waited for the sentence to finish before pushing open the door. His father looked tired, but he managed a small smile. "You always did know how to make an entrance." Daniel let out a shaky laugh and wrapped his father in the gentlest hug he could. "You scared me." "I know. You could have called me. I didn't want to interrupt your work." Daniel pulled up a chair. "Dad, there's nothing at that office more important than you." Harold looked away for a moment. "You've said that before. And I mean it." For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel noticed something. His father's groceries sat neatly in one corner of the room. Someone had even taped the torn paper bag back together. "Dad, who brought your groceries?" Harold's eyes softened. "A young woman. A neighbor?" He shook his head. "I'd never met her before." Daniel frowned. "What happened?" Harold took a slow breath. "I collapsed at the bus stop." Daniel's face turned pale. "What?" Most people kept walking. His son clenched his jaw. But she didn't. Harold smiled faintly. "She was in a hurry. I could tell." He paused. She kept looking at the time. Daniel listened carefully. "She missed something important because of me." "What do you mean?" "A job interview." Daniel stared at him. "She stayed anyway." Harold nodded. "I told her to leave. And she said my health mattered more." Silence filled the room. Harold continued quietly. "She called the ambulance. Picked up my groceries. Stayed until I was safe." Daniel looked down at the floor. "In a city full of people, she was the only one who stopped," Harold finished. A long moment passed before Harold reached into his coat pocket. "I think she dropped this." He handed Daniel a small blue notebook. It was worn around the edges, with a few loose papers tucked inside. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside were handwritten interview notes, leadership principles, questions to ask employers, salary calculations, a grocery budget written on the back of one page. Every dollar had been accounted for. Rent, utilities, student loan payment, gas, food. At the bottom, a single sentence was circled twice. This job could change everything. Daniel swallowed hard. He turned another page and found a resume. Emily Carter. Address. Phone number. Email. Bachelor's degree. 5 years of customer service experience. Volunteer work at a local food pantry. Excellent references. Daniel looked back at his father. She left this behind? Harold nodded. I tried to call after her, but she'd already gone. Daniel held the resume in silence. His company had interviewed dozens of candidates that morning. Hundreds had applied. People fought for positions there because the salaries were excellent, the benefits were generous, and promotions came quickly. Yet this woman had willingly walked away from an opportunity like that. For a stranger. He looked at his father again. What kind of person does that? Harold answered without hesitation. The kind you don't let disappear. Across the city, Emily unlocked the door to her tiny one-bedroom apartment. The place was clean but modest. A small couch sat beneath a window overlooking the parking lot. The refrigerator hummed louder than it should. She slipped off her shoes and placed her interview folder on the kitchen table. For a long time, she simply stood there. The apartment felt unusually quiet. Finally, she called her younger sister, Lily. Lily answered almost immediately. How'd it go? Emily forced a smile, even though no one could see it. I didn't make the interview. What happened? Emily explained everything. There was silence on the other end. Then Lily asked softly, Do you regret it? Emily looked out the window. A little boy across the parking lot was helping his grandmother carry laundry into their apartment. She smiled to herself. No. Not even a little? I lost a chance. She paused. But if I'd walked away from that man, I think I would have lost a piece of myself. Lily's voice cracked with emotion. Mom would have been proud of you. Emily felt tears welling again. I hope so. After hanging up, she opened her laptop and quietly started searching for new job listings. She had no idea that at that exact moment, Daniel Harrison was sitting in the back of his SUV, staring at her resume. He turned to his executive assistant. I don't care how long it takes. Sir, I want you to find Emily Carter. The assistant looked confused. There are thousands of Emily Carters. Daniel handed over the resume. Then start with this one. And when we find her? Daniel looked out the window, remembering the words his father had spoken. The kind you don't let disappear. A determined smile crossed his face. When we find her, I'm going to thank the woman who saved my father's life. The search didn't take long. By noon, Daniel's executive assistant knocked on his office door. We found her. Daniel looked up from his laptop. So soon? She wasn't hard to locate. Her resume had everything we needed. What do we know? The assistant glanced at his notes. Emily Carter, 28 years old, lives alone on the north side of the city. Family? One younger sister. Their mother passed away 4 years ago from cancer. Their father died when Emily was in high school. Daniel remained silent. The assistant continued. She graduated with honors, but never had the financial resources to pursue graduate school. Since then, she's worked 2 jobs to support herself and help pay for her sister's college tuition. Daniel slowly leaned back. So, she wasn't just trying to change her own life. No, sir. What about her interview this morning? The assistant hesitated. It was with us. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. What? The position for Senior Client Relations Manager. Daniel let out a slow breath. She was coming here? Yes. And she missed it because she stayed with my father. The office fell quiet. Finally, Daniel spoke. Clear my afternoon. You have the board meeting at 2. Reschedule it. The investor conference call? Move it. The assistant blinked. Sir, are you planning to meet her personally? Daniel stood. I'm planning to thank her the way she deserves. Across town, Emily was halfway through updating another job application when someone knocked on her apartment door. She frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. Looking through the peephole, she saw a well-dressed woman carrying a leather portfolio. Emily opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you, Miss Carter?" "Yes. My name is Rebecca Collins. I'm executive assistant to Daniel Harrison." Emily searched her memory. "I'm sorry, I don't recognize the name." Rebecca smiled politely. "I'm not surprised." She handed Emily a business card. Emily's eyes widened. Harrison Global Enterprises. The same company. The one whose interview she'd missed. Her heart sank. "I'm really sorry about this morning," Emily said before Rebecca could speak. "I know I wasted everyone's time." Rebecca looked genuinely puzzled. "Wasted? I missed my interview." Rebecca smiled. "Actually, Mr. Harrison would like to invite you to the office." Emily blinked. "I don't understand. He asked if you could come today." "I wasn't selected. This isn't another interview." "Then why?" Rebecca hesitated just enough to make Emily even more confused. "Mr. Harrison would prefer to explain that himself." Emily laughed nervously. "There must be some mistake." "There isn't." Rebecca handed her an envelope. Inside was a visitor pass and a handwritten note. "Emily, please give me 30 minutes of your time. I believe I owe you far more than that. Daniel Harrison." Emily read it twice. Then a third time. "I don't know what's happening." Rebecca smiled. "Neither did I when he canceled an entire afternoon of meetings." Emily looked up. "He canceled meetings?" "Every one of them." "For me?" Rebecca simply nodded. 45 minutes later, Emily stepped into the sleek glass headquarters she'd dreamed of working in. Everything about the building felt intimidating. Polished marble floors. Modern artwork. Employees in tailored suits moving confidently through the lobby. She suddenly became very aware that she was wearing the same clothes she'd rushed around the city in all morning. A receptionist greeted her warmly. "Miss Carter, Mr. Harrison is expecting you." As the elevator climbed toward the executive floor, Emily's stomach twisted into knots. She whispered to herself, "Please let this not be some misunderstanding." The elevator doors opened. Rebecca led her down a quiet hallway to a pair of large wooden doors. She knocked once. "Mr. Harrison, Ms. Carter is here." A calm voice answered. "Please send her in." Emily stepped inside. The office was breathtaking, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Behind a large desk stood a man in his late 30s. Confident, well-dressed. Yet there was nothing arrogant about the way he looked at her. Instead, he looked grateful. He walked around the desk and extended his hand. "Emily Carter?" She shook it. "Yes. My name is Daniel Harrison. It's nice to meet you." He smiled warmly. "The pleasure is entirely mine." Emily waited for him to continue. Instead, to her complete surprise, Daniel quietly said, "Before we discuss anything else." He took a step back. "I'd like to thank you for saving my father's life." Emily's eyes widened. "Your father?" "The gentleman at the bus stop this morning." Her mouth fell open. "Harold?" Daniel nodded. "He's my father." Emily stood frozen, replaying the morning in her mind. The groceries, the ambulance, the worried phone call. She had never imagined the elderly man she'd helped wasn't just someone's father. He was the father of the CEO whose interview she had missed. Daniel could see the shock on her face. He smiled gently. "My father hasn't stopped talking about you." Emily finally found her voice. "I didn't save him. You stop." He held her gaze. When everyone else kept walking, a silence settled between them. Not awkward, just deeply sincere. Daniel gestured toward the chairs by the window. "Would you sit with me for a few minutes?" Emily nodded, still trying to process everything. She had walked into the building expecting an apology for missing an interview. Instead, she was sitting across from the man who had every reason to forget her and every intention of making sure he never did. Emily sat quietly across from Daniel, still trying to make sense of everything that had happened. "I really don't know what to say," she admitted. Daniel smiled. "You don't have to say anything. My father already told me everything." He exaggerated. "He actually left out one important detail." Emily frowned. "What detail?" He said you kept apologizing because you thought helping him might cost you your future. She looked down at her hands. It probably did. Daniel shook his head. No, Emily. He reached into a folder on the table. I think it revealed exactly who you are. He slid a document toward her. Emily glanced at the first page, then looked again. Her eyes widened. Is this a job offer? She stared at him in disbelief. But I never interviewed. Daniel nodded. That's true. So, how can you know I'm qualified? Daniel folded his hands. My company can teach skills. He smiled warmly. But integrity isn't something you can train. Emily felt tears gathering in her eyes. You don't even know me. My father does. She laughed softly through her tears. He only knew me for 20 minutes. Daniel replied, sometimes 20 minutes is enough to see someone's true character. He continued, your resume shows experience. Your references speak highly of you. But what happened this morning told me something no interview ever could. Emily looked down at the offer. Senior Client Relations Manager. The exact position she'd dreamed of. The salary was higher than she'd hoped. Excellent health insurance. Retirement benefits. Paid vacation. A signing bonus. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. I can't believe this. Daniel leaned forward. There's one condition. Her heart skipped. What is it? You have to promise me you'll stay exactly the person who stopped for a stranger. Emily smiled through tears. I think I can do that. He extended his hand once more. Then welcome to Harrison Global. She shook it, her hands trembling. Thank you. Over the next few months, Emily proved that Daniel's decision had been the right one. She worked hard, asked thoughtful questions, treated every client with respect, and earned the trust of her coworkers. People quickly noticed that she remembered everyone's name, from executives to janitors. She never acted as though any job was beneath her. Whenever new employees joined the company, Emily made sure they felt welcome because she remembered what it felt like to be nervous and uncertain. One afternoon, Daniel's father visited the office. Harold walked in with the same cane, though he looked much healthier now. Emily hurried over. Harold, it's so good to see you. He smiled. I had to come check on my favorite employee. Daniel laughed from across the room. Careful, Dad. The others might hear you. Harold chuckled. They already know. He turned to Emily. My doctor says I'm doing well. I'm so happy to hear that. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small framed card. Inside was a handwritten quote. Success measures what you earn. Character measures what you give away. Never confuse the two. It's beautiful, Emily whispered. My late wife used to keep that on her desk, Harold said. I think she'd want you to have it now. Emily hugged him gently. Thank you. A year later, Harrison Global launched a new employee volunteer program. Every month, teams spent a day serving local food banks, homeless shelters, senior centers, and community organizations. When reporters asked Daniel where the idea had come from, he smiled. It started with one woman who reminded us that business is important, but people always come first. He never mentioned Emily by name. She hadn't helped Harold to be recognized. She had simply seen another human being who needed help. Several years passed. Emily continued to grow within the company, eventually becoming one of its most respected leaders. On her office wall, the framed quote from Harold hung beside another photo. It wasn't a picture of an award or a promotion. It was a simple photograph taken at a neighborhood charity event. Emily stood beside Harold and Daniel, all three of them laughing. Visitors often asked why it was her favorite picture. She always answered the same way. Because it reminds me that the best opportunities in life rarely arrive the way we expect. One evening, as the office emptied, a young intern rushed past Emily's desk. I'm sorry, he said. I'm late for an interview across town. Emily smiled. Good luck. A few moments later, she looked out the window and noticed an elderly woman struggling with several heavy grocery bags near the building entrance. The intern had already reached the sidewalk. He stopped, looked at his watch, then turned around and walked back to help her. Emily smiled to herself. Kindness had become contagious. And that was a legacy worth far more than any business success. She quietly whispered the words her mother had once told her. The world remembers successful people. She watched the young man carry the groceries to the woman's car. But heaven remembers kind ones. And for the first time in years, she understood just how true those words really were.